Let's talk about the Season 6 PTR disasters that must be fixed before the expansion of Vessel of Hatred launches. So it's going to be my final review and my final feedback as, well, the PTR has now concluded. There are a lot of pain points a lot of people have mentioned. I'm going to take your guys' comments from previous videos as well as just what I've been seeing around in the Diablo community to kind of sum it up into one video. These are the major problems and disasters that need to be fixed. So starting right off, I've been seeing this in a lot of different threads talking about the ancestral loot with greater affix and ancestral uniques going to be just impossible for players to farm. To kind of give you guys a representation of what I have seen and what I have actually experienced myself, this is in Season 5. This is the current game. If you go kill a boss on the highest world tier, you get showered with a bunch of loot. Maybe you get some mythics, maybe you don't, but at the end of the day, it feels like a pinata, right? You're very excited, maybe if it's your first time especially, to see that purple thing drop and all these other things dropping at the same time. It's really exciting, right? Even if you don't need that ancestral unique with a greater affix, maybe you can go trade it, and I think that's a really great thing to have. But now, if you go to the PTR and you kill a boss, well, you just get a small 3-4 uniques, and getting those to be greater affix, good luck. I mean, this is talking about only the 1%ers of the 1%ers are now going to have all of their gear relatively best in slot. Most players will relatively not achieve their ideal build. And right now, I want to say it's in a pretty okay spot in Season 5. Like, if you play the game a decent amount of time, you can get greater affixes. It's not that difficult. Now, keep in mind, we did not have access to the Infernal Hordes, but this is the way that they showed it for us, and this is the way that the game worked on Season 6. Basically, you go from this, and then you go to this. There's a huge, massive difference in terms of, like, what you're getting, and I think that that does need to be changed in the game. Another thing that a lot of people are talking about is kind of the same thing, and I've seen this time and time again, so I really want to hit this one home, is the drop rates, especially on greater affixes, are simply way too low. The average player will not have the same experience, and for that reason, they may just dip out and may look at other games. I try to make my feedback not on personally what I want in the game in terms of like how much I play, because I know that I put way more time to this game than the average player. And if Diablo 4 wants to cater towards the masses, which is kind of the direction that Diablo 4 is going in versus like D2, where there's a lot of niche things that you have to like know about that you just have to know about via just watching another YouTuber's video. Everything should be kind of built into the game, and it should be relatively streamlined, and I think that having these really low drop rates kind of feels bad. As far as breaking goes, I really am not a fan of like the RNG masterworking and tempering system. At least with masterworking, you can eventually get what you want. Now, it will take a really long time, but overall, I think a lot of players don't like the system of like, well, I have like a 1 in 3 chance of getting this specific mod on my weapon, and then not only do I get that one mod, I want to hit maybe a good roll, so when I masterwork, it actually gives me a high number. So my solution to this would be maybe add some sort of a scroll to give you the highest roll, or just guarantee a certain like mod that you want on a item, especially when it comes to masterworking. And like, while I make some videos and I'm telling you guys this is going to be the best thing, you need a high roll and then you need to get it masterworked 3 times to get your chance for the attack skill to activate 2 times. It is very hard for a lot of builds to get that, so a lot of times people feel like they are breaking their build even though they may get the right roll on the temper. So you still have to get the right masterworking, and to try to get 2 of these to roll high is kind of required for certain builds to have that like double attacks, you know, whatever attack skill that you're using to activate twice. So I think that they could maybe look at making this a little bit easier, maybe just let people decide what role that they want on it, like as in like, do you want like Hammer of the Ancients, do you want like Whirlwind, whatever skill it is, just guarantee us the role on it. But maybe that could be a range between, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 versus maybe there being too many roles. So at the end of the day, I think it's better to have some sort of way to guarantee it, whether that is a drop item or what they decide to do with it, at least some sort of way to guarantee that our item isn't going to be bricked. Now, we do have that new scroll coming that is going to reset the ability to temper, but we still have to RNG the tempers on, and I think that that feels bad because there's no skill in it. It's just kind of like, well, did I hit it or did I not hit it? Another thing that a lot of people were talking about, and I mentioned this too, I don't really care to play Eternal, like, forever. There are people out there that do play it, but I've mentioned several times in my videos that, like, this basically bricks all of the Eternal player base, because they have to basically farm new items, and some people just simply don't have the time or want to put in the time for this. You can see over here, I don't want to destroy my Eternal characters. If it's the case, I want my money back, I'm quitting. This is why I stopped playing the game. This all is stemming from specifically me talking about all of our items are going to 540 on the PTR. Your best in slot, your 925, whatever you farmed for, with triple greater affixes, whatever the case may be, all of the stats on the item are essentially getting destroyed because you have to farm the mythics even, because their item power is not the new item power. And that's something that I think that is baked into this game that I think really needs to be re-looked at. And it has to do with item power in general. And the way I see the design of the item power right now in the game is just get to the end game. Every single step that you make to get to the end game, your items do not matter whatsoever. You can never get too excited about getting a drop until it is obviously going to be greater affix. In the new system update for Season 6, if it is a non-greater affix, even on a legendary, it's just not going to be able to throw on those 2 tempers, which essentially renders the item objectively not best in slot. No matter what, it can't be good. And it's not even just because it has a greater affix, so the number's better. It's you literally cannot put 2 tempers on it. And you already had the players learn that, okay, you put 2 tempers on the item. Now, some people are super confused. They're like, dude, my game is bricked. Why did they update? I can only put 1 temper on. And some of these things maybe weren't communicated enough. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm just going to get the 800 item power and I'm going to do it. But I still think that in terms of a design, this makes it so the player, while they are playing, especially a good player, they have in their mindset that nothing matters until you get that greater affix. And I think that there could be some leeway with being able to get a very powerful item, maybe at level 50 or whatever the case may be. It just doesn't have to be a greater affix to actually be like pretty decent. Obviously, yes, getting every single thing with every stat being greater affix would be better, but I don't like this idea of item power in general in action RPGs. It just makes it so like you just are forced to only play at the end game to get the best stuff. And while they are adding some difficulties, you still only need to go to the torment difficulty to get the best stuff. This is a huge thing specifically for discrepancy between builds, and it has to do with the boss just having way too much HP. Most of the time, most of the trash stuff, even if it takes a player like, instead of 1 second, it takes 2 seconds, they don't really mind playing another build. But the main problem with the way that this game is shaping up, if your build is not uber super S tier with like super good stats, the bosses have way too much HP, especially in the pit. This is a huge breakpoint for builds just not feeling as good. Even in the Infernal Hordes, the bosses, they just simply have too much HP. And I'm not saying that every single boss needs to be deleted in 1 frame, but the thing is that they just simply have so much HP, and because they don't really deal that much damage, this is more so in the Infernal Hordes. In the pit, yeah, they do enough damage to actually kill you, but you're sitting there barely paying attention, and sometimes while I'm farming, especially in the Infernal Hordes, with like a mediocre build, I could be like watching an episode of an anime on another screen, and I could watch like half of it, because some of these bosses will take 10 minutes on just a regular build. Even if you have like really good gear, if it's not like a super S tier meta thing, it's just simply not going to be performing like, super good. Like if you wanted to play Ice Shards, for example, compared to like, let's say the Lightning Spear, that is a too much of a difference between night and day. I understand not everything's going to be balanced, but at least give us some sort of ground where the boss's HP is not so far away from what we require for damage. Speaking of damage, I want to get into that as well. This is something that I definitely know that they want to add into the game is the Armory System, but there comes to a point where it's like, yeah, we're working on it, we hear you guys, but like there comes to a point where like, you just need to hire new people to work on this and get it done within the next season. I wish they could just say, hey guys, Armory's coming out next season, you guys will like it. That's all I'm looking forward to, not necessarily like, okay guys, we hear you, you guys want an Armory System, well, we add it in the roadmap. No, this thing needs to come out like immediately, so players don't have to either build a whole new character just to play the same class but a different build. It's going to add a lot more quality of life, and it will add a lot more players to stick around to try out another build versus, oh, I don't want to take apart my character. Even though they've added this new system to make it so it's a little bit easier to progress, because you have all of your Paragon points now, because you only need to get to level 60, and then you have all of your Paragon points. This just needs to be added into the game. I'm hoping that it just comes out at launch. My guess is they don't want to announce something because they don't want it to be broken and not work, but I think it just needs to come out. Another thing that is a huge pain point in this game is just the amount of things that just clog up the inventory. I know we are getting the ability to hold all of the runes in basically like the socketables with the gems, but if you actually play the game literally for 10 minutes, if you just go to PTR, get all the runes, you'll notice that you can't hold all the runes in the gems because that stash tab that is in the character's inventory is not big enough. I really wish they just made the stash like scrollable, or like the inventory that has all of the runes and the gems. Make that scrollable, so then that way we can hold as many runes as the game has in that tab, because as of right now, the tab that has the brand new runes can't even fit all of the runes and the gems. So it's so weird that we get this new thing, but they made it so small that you can't fit it. But these in general definitely need to be stackable, but stash space in general in this game could look at a rework. I know it's kind of like something that it's a game limitation, but I just don't know why the game is designed in a way where it loads everyone's inventory when there's a bunch of things that we cannot trade. So perhaps you can maybe make it so it doesn't load the other people's mythic items, and then that could kind of solve some of the issues. But that's just a quick little fix maybe that they could implement in. A lot of people really want an auction house, and I definitely second this. I've been saying this for a while. I don't want to go to a third-party website and then have to like log in with my Battle.net, where maybe, you know, somehow their servers get hacked and everyone's Battle.net, you know, stuff gets leaked. But at the end of the day, I think there needs to be some sort of a way for players to interact and trade with, because if you have traded, I complain about Path of Exile trade a lot, and that is simply due to like people not responding, or people like kind of fixing the market, basically listing items that are way cheaper and they never intend to sell them. Now, that doesn't happen too often on the Diablo trade website, but there's a lot of times where people will list things for like 4 gold, and they mean such a high number in gold that you can't actually list it for that price. And some people are like, wow, he's selling it for 4 gold. So it's so high, that number doesn't even fit in the game's availability to list it at that price. So there's a little bit of confusion. I think just in the game, at an auction house, I think it would be really cool to go ahead and see this, because it's just a much smoother experience. Because the main problem is that the way that the trade works is that just people don't respond to trades, or let's say the item is sold, they don't say, oh, this item is sold, let me remove it from the trade, because it's just kind of a hassle to kind of like do this consistently, especially when you're listing so many items. Like, hold on, and I've traded items before and someone gives me like the wrong item, and I have to tell them, you know, it's this one, and they're like, hold on, and then they have to swap like through like 3 different characters to see which mule it's on, because they literally have no space. So just make it so we can list the item and then it gets out of our inventory, so that way I don't have to have a stash tab full of auction stuff and then have to kind of like look at the item while I am, you know, searching for it because someone finally joined my party and we're on at the exact same time. Just add a trade system that's just built into the game. I think this would be a huge quality of life thing in the game. And I still think we need a loot filter. This has been a thing that I've seen so many times, again and again. I don't know why the Diablo 4 team is like, no loot filters. This is just like a very basic thing in a game. It almost comes to the point where I'm like, it's like a mana bar. It's like so important that it needs to be inside of your action RPG for a loot filter. Ideally, yes, you could just make a game that's so awesome that has no loot filters really required, because you can just craft everything or whatever the case may be. There needs to be something done with the loot filter, especially with like blue and rare items. They're just pointless in the game. They should just not drop in the later world tiers because they're absolutely pointless. I would love for them to do something with it, and they did say that they plan to do something with like the blues and the yellows and stuff, but at this current state, we just need a loot filter in this game ASAP. Whether they need to hire more people to do that or whatever the case may be, we need a loot filter. I don't know why they're so against it for so long. Now I want to talk about the stat squish, and this has to do actually with 2 different things. I get that they want to make the numbers not crazy, but they've kind of went in an opposite direction when they're like, oh, okay, you know, let's look at some glyphs over here. Oh, plus 500% damage. You've squished the numbers in the item power and in other departments, but then you still add 5 glyphs that have like plus 1,000 crit, 500 damage. I get that we need some sort of source of power here, but if you are trying to reduce the stats, you can't just throw in 5 glyphs that have like 500% on each one. This is where there's a discrepancy, and this is why our damage numbers look like this. It's just like this big chain of stuff. And the thing is that if they reduce our numbers, you also have to reduce the boss's HP, because if you do pit 100, you'll notice the boss still has crazy amounts of HP. When I was strung off my Thorns Barb that can literally one-shot, it still has an incredible amount of HP, because even if you stat squish, you also have to factor in the boss's HP. So you need to scale that down significantly as well for the game. The next thing I want to talk about is leaderboards. Leaderboards are something that players can come back to time and time again to try to go ahead and compete. Now, this is only for a small percentage of players, but it would also let the majority of the players kind of see what's on the leaderboard so they get a good understanding on maybe what is the top build. It's always cool to see innovative and interesting things happen. And there is a website that you can do this, but I think it needs to be built into the game. They already have a gauntlet leaderboard, but what's weird with the gauntlet is the gauntlet leaderboard, it is even like max level. It doesn't really make sense that you have a leaderboard for content that isn't even like the end game content. So maybe they'll add one for the brand new raids, the citadels, like the team that can complete things the fastest. Another thing that I would want to see in the game, which I think is a really cool idea, but this is kind of another like, you know, top 1%er thing, but I think it is still cool to have these community events where, let's say, the top team gets to design the next mythic unique for the next season. I think that that would be really cool to have these kind of community driven events, whether you want to go ahead and have like different like outfit contests, like the coolest looking rogue, barbarian, or whatever, and then they get some sort of reward. Fortnite was doing this for a while, a lot of content creators where they were calling them like fashion shows, but I think it's cool to have the community driven events that are kind of built into the game, whether that is the best PvP team or the clans. Where's the brand new clan system? What's the point of a clan in the first place in Diablo? It's basically like an extended friends list that kind of has a lot of hoops to jump over, but at the end of the day, I would really like to see some sort of competitive and or community events inside of the game, but these have to be built inside, not like a separate website where I have to visit to see which build is doing the best, right? Another thing is the Runewords. Now, I want to say it's kind of too late to go ahead and make a completely rework of the thing, but it would be cool to see just some sort of small stats in the original design of Runewords. This was back when David Kim was working on the game. I believe this was in 2020. He had revealed a bunch of the runes that would have stats baked into the thing, whether you put it on armor or the weapons, and you can see it has some sort of stat. How it works right now is if you don't happen to have the rune combo, you literally get 0 value. But I saw a couple really cool ideas with the Runewords, because as of right now, there are some builds that losing out on the 300% to the main stat is too big, because remember, you're sacrificing 2 sockets. So a lot of builds, they want to throw this on their weapon, because the weapon, it's a lot of just additive damage in a lot of cases. But for the most part, it would be really cool for all builds to just use 2 Runewords, because I think it's too late to go ahead and say, okay, we need to put 5 runes in an item. It's too late, I would say, to kind of fix. But it would be kind of cool to see some small thing. But I think that this person had a pretty good idea over here. This is actually something that was on one of my videos, saying that I would rather have the vampire power system from Season 2, but add more powers to it and not take up inventory. So if they did that, kind of similar to Runewords, maybe like there is a rune sack, right? You could have like a satchel of runes, and then you just be able to put 4 runes in, and it works the same way it does, but it does not clog up your slots, right? So it doesn't use up your slots, because the new system should encourage all the players to play with a brand new system, not, well, you know, my build might not be able to move 5 meters 10 times to get 1 teleport. I would ideally just like the ability to straight up teleport. Like if we were to compare Enigma to the iteration of teleport, well, we have to walk 5 meters 10 times to teleport 1 time, versus D2, which is like, okay, a rune word, you just teleport infinitely. I like the idea of just using it infinitely. I think someone else also said this. This was another thing that got a bunch of upvotes. Blizzard's love of systems where you have a % chance or need to build up charges for the thing to happen 1 or 2 times a second is frustrating. Why can't our gear just work? And I think that this is a really good point. I think that it'd be really cool to move away from this lucky hit chance for this to happen. It could work for some builds. I'm not saying that they should delete the whole system, because Undaro's is a really cool build and it all works off of lucky hit, but it's just too baked into majority of the builds to have this requirement to have this happen. And it seems like we're kind of just building up all these little steps to do something, and that's a random chance, right? But at the end of the day, that's the way it currently works, and those are the systems that I think a lot of people want to see some improvements and changes on, as I do want Diablo 4 obviously to do as well as possible, but these are the disasters, in my personal opinion, that need to be kind of looked at before the season launches, and it's kind of my final season review. So if I was to go over like the entirety of what we had on the PTR, keep in mind, we did not have the Infernal Hordes, which is a great source of getting greater affixes, but, you know, it basically forces you to do that system if you want to get greater affixes. Now, you can always get gold and trade, but that just means that if you want to get the best gear, you can only go there. And I think it's always better to have a variety of things to do at the end game that the player can decide and choose what they want to do, versus, oh, I need to go ahead and get pit material. Okay, I have to do this very specific thing. Where you can do nightmare dungeons now, and you can. That's how you get the new material, by the way. To get pit material, you're going to be doing nightmare dungeons instead of doing the pit. Now, if you want to level up your glyphs, now you have to go to the pit. There's a lot of things that are getting moved around, and while for me, I understand where to go, a lot of people are going to be confused specifically on like, well, I'm doing the pit now, how come I'm not able to get my materials? And that's how you level up your glyphs now. As far as that change goes though, I would say it does take quite a while to actually upgrade. In fact, this is kind of another thing I want to mention. It takes a very, very long time to max out your glyphs. So my guess is they were kind of looking at the player's retention rate and playtime and noticed maybe they wanted players to stick around a little bit longer. But the way I see it in the design is it's more of a grind versus being able to kind of build your character, because when you're upgrading 5 different glyphs, you gotta level up 5 of them to 100. It's kind of a more time sink, and you're getting a lot of power from it. I showed you guys where we're getting like 500% damage to dust devils, or like you can get like 1,000 crit damage. It's kind of like this like brain dead thing of like, yeah, just more damage, more damage. I like the idea of more creative ways to increase your damage versus just play the game and then you get like 0.1% 10 different times again and again and again on all these different separate things to then feel powerful. But that's my 2 cents on it. And if I was to give the PTR feedback, I would say I personally just like the way that the game was going. In Season 4, we were really going in a good direction, but in Season 6, I'm kind of like, ooh, this is kind of rough, and I think that we need to kind of go back to the drawing board. In fact, if they did not make these changes, I actually think the game would be in a better spot. Now, there are a lot of nice quality of life things like the buff bar. These are all great changes, and I'm going to highlight a video that goes over all the good changes, but the point of this video is more so going over the things that are needing to be fixed for the players to enjoy the content a lot more. So it's kind of more of a complaint video, but at the end of the day, my whole goal is to make this game as great as possible by giving them the feedback that they need. So these are the disasters that just need to be fixed here. But for the most part, if I was to give my review numerically, I would say it was very lukewarm. Now, keep in mind, we didn't have access to the Citadel. We don't have access to the new class. We didn't have access to the whole new region. Really wish that that was available for us to test out in the PTR, but perhaps they want us to have kind of a big surprise. And I think going into that would be a very nice thing. Speaking of nice things, also the strongholds are actually worth doing now, which is a really nicer change. But overall, if I was to give it like a numerical, how much fun did I have? 10 being like Season 4 was like a 9 or 10 out of 10. Like Season 4 was amazing. In Season 5, it was kind of more of the same. There's a bunch of stuff that did get buffed, but it was kind of just like, well, I had a lot of fun, and I was interested in seeing some of the newer changes to some of the uniques, and had a little bit of fun with Season 5. But Season 6, I just felt like it was too much of a drag. If I was to give it like a numerical score, I would say I only really like the quality of life things. I would maybe give it like a 3 or a 5 out of 10. 5 being like barely that's just average, but there's so many things that weren't backwards to make me not enjoy the game. I don't want to necessarily give it a negative score, because there's definitely nice quality of life changes. Certain things got buffed and changes, but I just didn't have fun. So I don't know, maybe like a 4 out of 10. And it's coming off of like Season 5 being pretty like decent in terms of like how much fun I had in the game, but Season 4 is what made me enjoy the game a lot more, was all the seasonal changes in Season 4. Specifically, the tempering was really exciting, but I didn't feel like there was a big exciting thing going into Season 6. It was kind of just more of the same, and they just moved around a lot of stuff, and it was really that it took too long to get to the items that I already previously had, because keep in mind, this game is going to be like seasonal. But I know this video is a little bit longer, and in fact, I wanted to go over all the classes, like what I would give for suggestions, but I wanted to kind of condense this into a shorter video here, even though this one's like 28 minutes long here. But hopefully you guys learned something, and maybe you guys disagree with me. Definitely let me know, and I'll be giving Blizzard some feedback after I do my Diablo partner like write-up on things that I think need to be fixed. But those are like the main things that I think are disasters. Basically, give us don't ruin our legacy items, basically. And then also on top of that, just make the drop rates a little bit better. But we didn't have like a seasonal power, and the point of testing a new season is to see the power. And hopefully we are still getting a seasonal power. If not, well, at least we get to experience the new class. And what is the points of the raids? I don't know. Maybe there's some other power that is going to be obtained in the raids. And maybe the raids are the new endgame thing where that's all we need to do. We can maybe level up glyphs. Maybe we can get pit material inside of the Citadel. That's an area that I've really felt like should have been shown off, because if that's where all the greater affixes and all the good gears drop in anyways, then my complaints would just be solved. But that information wasn't out there. So I can only go over what I seen in the PTR. Anyways, that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts on any of the topics that we talked about down below. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll update you guys if things do change in the future. Take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. And let me know your thoughts and suggestions down below.